Well, here we are again with the Apollo Detectives, as they call themselves. The sad truth is, of course, that none of these muppets could detect their own backsides with both hands and a very large mirror. Now, it's just another very quick video on shadows, because Ben mentioned in his reply video that, they've never said there's no such thing as perspective, but of course they never say there is such a thing as perspective either. Now, let's just have a bit of a look at this, and I'll play you another couple of clips that I made about shadows, and you know, we can see what they've got to say about it, and we can see what the truth really is. Now, the truth is, of course, that these guys have zero photographic analysis ability. For some reason, these guys have got to be in their bonnet about the moon landings being faked, and they want to try and convince people that it's true. It obviously isn't. Every argument they make is nonsense. Absolute bloody nonsense. But nevertheless, it's amusing. But I saw a bit of Ben's latest reply video, and of course, as usual, he doesn't reply. He says that he's proved me wrong over and over again. Well, I don't think he's proved me wrong once. And in the video, he says, and he quotes the Roswell Brazil thing, and he says, I think it was members of Brazil's family that said these materials had these qualities on it, that he made a different statement, you know, initially saying it was like out of this world or something like that, you know. It's but doesn't produce any evidence to back that up. The only evidence we ever see is the statement Brazil made to the newspaper, where he states that he found balsa wood sticks, strips of rubber, and tin foil. Yeah, Ben will quote folklore without providing any evidence whatsoever and say that's proof. He's proved me wrong. And I don't think that's the case at all. There was another thing. What was it? What was the other thing he said? Oh, it's gone out of my head for now. I was going to mention there was another thing that he said. But anyway, let's just do the shadow thing, and maybe it will come back to me.
It makes me laugh that Mythbusters tried to prove that photograph was taken in direct sunlight and not in a studio by setting it up in a studio. Shane Winley did the same thing.
Yeah, but what you've got to bear in mind is that they were replicating the sun angle and everything else with a single light source, which is a pretty good facsimile. The other thing too is to duplicate that scene in sunlight. They would have had to have gone out into the desert and made a full-scale replica of the lunar module. Every single rock, the size and shape of every single rock, and mapped the topology of the terrain extremely accurately, so they could reproduce the actual topology of the undulations in the lunar surface. So I don't think it's reasonable really to expect anybody to duplicate that. These people, of course, in order to prove that this was done with studio lighting, would have to make the models that they say it's 12 inches tall or whatever. Well, make one. Make the terrain exactly the same. Get the small rocks, shape them precisely, and then see what happens. See if they need two lights to produce the identical shadows, and then pull the camera back so we can see the two lights and the angles. That's not what they're doing, is it? They're looking at it and they're offering an opinion. They're offering personal opinions by looking at something they have absolutely no ability to analyse. Because if they did have an ability, if these guys had any photographic analysis ability whatsoever, they wouldn't question the Apollo photography. It's as simple as that. Because it happened. They are Apollo photographs. They are evidence that it happened. These guys are not offering any evidence whatsoever. Yeah, the Apollo Detectives. Did I say it earlier? These guys could not detect their own backsides with both hands and a very large mirror. They are clueless.
Mythbusters' thing was that their argument was that it was the rough terrain that was causing this, but they didn't do anything to establish that it was terrain in the photograph itself. And in fact, the resolution's not very good in this one, but there's a better example on all this and stuff where they had like a close-up of the shadows on the rocks in the same terrain as the lunar module. That seemed to be pointing in the same direction as the rocks in the foreground. That illustrated that terrain was not the issue in this case.
Well, no, it didn't. Again, he said it looks like this, it looks like that. Well, unless you know, and you can apply some sort of mathematical analysis to the angles, you don't know. This is just an opinion. And as I showed in my previous video, you can get diverging shadows from the sun. Shadows from the sun go all over the place. And I'll show another couple of clips that I did earlier in the week, just to illustrate that point.
So I believe the last real picture you were talking about was one from Apollo 17, in which shadows were like intersecting at near 90 degrees.
Yeah, that makes no, but that doesn't matter. Shadows will intersect at all kinds of angles depending on the size and shape of the object, and the the ground, the topology of the ground that they're on. If you knock a post in the ground vertically, it's going to cast a shadow in a certain direction. If you stick another post in the ground next to it and just angle it so that it's slightly off a vertical, the shadow will diverge away from the shadow of the other pole. And the size and shapes of rocks are going to cast shadows in different directions depending on what size and shape they are. I actually took a video of the sun shining through a lattice steel radio tower just to illustrate the point that shadows are cast depending on the size and shape of the object, and it's a very good example actually, because it shows, because as the sunlight shines through the lattice work on the tower, it shows shadows intersecting at all kinds of angles.
Yeah, that's right. I get the number of it, but I did my first moon paper on that particular.
All the Apollo believers who tried to debunk what we're saying have supposedly recreated these images and proved that they were taken in sunlight, but they've all done it by setting them up in studios, so they're kind of defeating their own point and proving that. The only person I know who's done an experiment to reproduce these pictures in real sunlight is yourself, Jarrah.
Okay. All right. Well, in future, Ben, you can say that you've seen some videos that I've done that have shown shadows cast in real sunlight. They go all over the place. And you should really be pointing out, Ben, that it's a matter of perspective. As you move around, it will look, the scene will look different. Okay? Now, the shadows are cast where they're cast by the sunlight. Those angles don't change. But how the view you get of them, of those shadows, will change as you move your position around in the landscape. And the shadows can get longer and shorter, but the angles remain the same. Okay, so when I did the fence post video, those shadows would have been diverging apart from whatever angle I looked at it. So they wouldn't get parallel to each other as I walked around. Those angles are still there, and I'll show you. I shot a little video the other day. I'll show you that in a sec. Just to demonstrate that point. But in future, just point that out, will you? Just point that out. They're sitting there making these statements based entirely on their opinions. That's all it is. They have no idea what they're looking at. I doubt any of these people have ever seen shadows in real sunlight the way they're talking.
The one you did with the cardboard box.
Yeah, that's right. I had a cardboard box with the The colour looks was actually to shield the subject from the natural fill light of the blue sky, because here on the Earth, a lot of people don't realise this, but the blue sky itself acts as a secondary light source, filling in the shadows and whatnot. Whereas if you were to remove the atmosphere and stuff, obviously we wouldn't have that light.
Well, yeah, okay. You can tell the time by the sun by knocking a stick in the ground, and you can see the shadow moving around. Yeah, you can tell the time by it. So I would say that if that's true at all, and I doubt it if it's coming from this guy, then it would be so minimal as to be unnoticeable.
Light scattering effect. And there would be no fill light in that case. So that was what the couple of boxes for. I'd also done experiments trying to recreate the 90-degree shadow angles that brought to the attention and stuff. And the only way I could possibly do that by perspective alone was if there were massive space between the two, or if there was with a fisheye lens or something like that, which obviously would.
Yeah, okay. So he can't reproduce shadows at right angles and shadows that intersect with each other unless what was it he said? I can't remember now. Anyway, he said he can't do it. Okay, he can't do it.
He didn't have fisheye lens.
One question for Raza. Have you seen the film Make Believe Smoke and Light with the enhanced?
Sounds like Mr. Weaver needs to get his book on the market pretty quick if he wants to get any money out of it.
Commentary on it. It's been done by Bob Williams.
I don't know if I've seen the enhanced. It's been many years ago that I watched some.
Okay, on the Apollo Detectives YouTube channel, which is run by Bob.
Okay, I think that's enough of that. But what they go on to say is, if we just let that move on a little bit, just to about there, I think it is. Yeah, they're showing some diverging angles. Let's just go back a little bit. Sorry about this, guys, but I probably should have just let it play on.
You're showing there was probably taken from the set they were using to create the.
It's probably taken from the set they were using, probably. They don't know anything, these guys. It's just a matter of opinion. Zero photographic analysis ability.
The images, but using models to do so, and using spotlights in studios to do it. Because that.
But what you've got to bear in mind is these guys have not replicated this. According to Marcus Allen's analysis, they haven't made a model. Where's my nice Parker pencil? They haven't made a model the size that Marcus Allen says this is. They haven't recreated the lunar surface topology. They haven't recreated the size and the shapes of the rocks. They've just looked at a photograph and they're giving an opinion on it. That's all that is. And they're not explaining that they do not once mention perspective. So as you walk around, how different is this going to look? Oops. Okay. What it won't do is change the angles. What it will do is make that look different. As you walk around, it will appear different. The shadows might get longer and shorter, but the angles don't change. Obviously, if you're over there, these two are going to look closer together, where you might not be able to see that one. But they never ever say that. They never ever say, well, we think this is studio light here and there's a studio light here, but of course it could just be a matter of perspective, because someone's standing here and they're looking across it, and these shadows are right by them and these shadows are further away. They never say anything like that. They never say, well, depending on the shape of the rock, the shadows can be, where's my pencil? The shadows can be cast in different directions depending on the shape of the rock. Anyway, let's just have a look at a couple of videos I made about shadows, and then we might have a quick look at what Ben said about it in his reply video. Right, well, I just thought I'd do something else on shadows. I can do videos on shadows all day and every day, but I thought I was out and about, so I had the phone with me, so I thought I'd just shoot a quick shadow video. Now I had my finger over the microphone on the phone, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to play this on my laptop and talk over the top of it, but I'm sure you'll get the picture. I think the point will be made anyway. It's going to be good enough to make the point. So here is a power pole. Hang on, I'll just stop that for a second. The cross tree is horizontal, okay, to the ground. Pole is vertical, cross tree is horizontal. These are two parallel wires that are going over to the next pole. There's another cross tree down here, another couple of insulators. So these are parallel. This is horizontal to the ground, okay. I'm just going to walk over to the pole and show you the shadow that it casts. The picture from the underneath, so you can see that the wires are parallel. Actually, from this point of view, it actually looks like the insulators are slightly coming towards each other. That's because it's quite a high pole, but these are actually parallel. The distance between the insulators will be the same on the next pole down. But just remember that looks like the insulators are coming towards each other. Now when we look at the shadow looks very different, doesn't it? The shadow shows the insulators going away from each other, and the cross tree on the top is shown at a funny angle. It's not shown like that, is it? Which is how it appears. Cross tree is parallel to the ground, but it's shown at an angle. Now these angles don't change. The shadows fall as they're cast. You can see me walking around now. Now, due to perspective, this side now looks longer than that side. See that? That's perspective, because I've changed my perspective from looking that way to looking from here, looking from that angle, and looking from this angle. And what it's done is it's reduced, it appears to have reduced the length of that part of the cross tree and elongated this part of the cross tree. But as you can see, the cross tree angle compared with the pole is still the same. So when you get diverging shadows, by changing your perspective, you can make them look slightly different in length. But what you can't do is make them look very different. You can't make them look different with regard the angles of the shadows to each other. Okay? So that's the perspective part of it. Walking around, changing my perspective has made this look smaller, and it's made this look longer. But it hasn't changed the angle. Okay? Now as I'm going round, you can see the angle is still remaining the same. As I change my perspective, the angles are still the same. There's the shadow from the insulator, the shadow of the cross tree compared with the pole. What's happening though is this is getting shorter and this is getting longer as my perspective is changing. That's what it looks like. You've got one light source in the sky shining down across the power pole with a cross tree at the top, and the 2 wires and the 2 insulators. I'm going to continue to walk around. As I continue to walk around, as I change my perspective, this side gets shorter. This side gets longer. But the angle is the same. See that? The angle of the insulator. Angle of the pole. Angle of the cross tree. The angles remain the same. And walk completely 360 degrees. And again, from this perspective, that's still away. Cross tree is still at an angle to the pole. This side is now shorter. This side is now longer. But the angles are the same. That's the other insulator there. It's not parallel with that, is it? Just as it was when I was standing directly in front of the pole. Just as it was when I was standing over there, looking from that way, looking from that way. So you can change the length of the shadows depending on your perspective. But it doesn't change the angles that the shadows are actually cast at. They remain the same. All right, well, I think that's a pretty good demonstration of angles cast, shadow angles being cast by the sun, a single light source, and how those shadows change with perspective. Okay? See that? Getting longer, getting shorter, angles remaining the same. Quick demonstration. Oh, it does that darkening at the bottom. That's bloody annoying. The angles remain the same. It's longer, shorter, longer, shorter. Remember, they're of equal length, these cross trees on either side. And the cross tree is horizontal to the ground. So that's just a demonstration of how shadows change with perspective. Okay, so the angles the shadows cast does not change. The length of the shadows changes with perspective. All right, well, let's actually let's go to. I shot another bit of video around a radio tower the other day, and of course radio towers, you've got the 3 main legs. It's a self-supporting tower. You've got the 3 main legs of the tower, and they're going towards the top of the tower. They come inwards to a point. It's not quite a point, but they're not vertical. So you've got the legs of the tower. You've got a couple of short posts which are vertical, and you've got the cross members providing the support for the tower structure, and that casts shadows all over the place. And I think just to get another idea of how diverging shadows remain divergent regardless of perspective, we'll go and have a look at that. Okay, well, here's a video I made by a radio tower the other day. Now, as you can see, I'm walking around the tower and there are shadows being cast all over the place. What was it Jarrah White said? Couldn't get shadows at right angles? They really are clueless, these guys. And I thought this was a pretty good example. because it all depends on the size and shape of the object casting the shadow and the topology of the ground. Now, if I remember rightly, there's one of the there's one of the main legs of the tower. Now that's a pretty good picture. That's a pretty good demonstration, I think, of intersecting shadows being cast from the sun. There's no other light source, just the sun in the sky. Obviously it's behind me at this point. And because of the size and the shape of the object, you know, we've got an absolute mishmash of intersecting angles being cast on the ground from this radio tower. I think this one is probably this one here, this vertical here. This one here is going to be this one here, I would say. But it's the structure of the tower, the size and the shape of the structure is casting all these intersecting shadows. Look at that point there. How many angles, how many intersecting shadows are there? Oh, they're there. That's what I should be saying to the Apollo defectives. Okay, so and here we can see that the main, there's three of these main tower legs. They sort of they taper in towards the top, so they're not vertical. Most radio towers taper towards the top, depending on who you get to build your towers for you. That is because it's tapering in towards the top, it's at a different angle to another part of the structure. So you can see these two shadows are diverging apart here. There's a triangle there as well. There's another line there. There's a couple of lines intersecting there. Okay, now I'm going to move around. Now I really mucked up the sound on this because I got a new iPhone and I kept putting my finger over the bloody microphone. Now, as you can see, I'm walking around and I'm changing my perspective. Yeah. Now I'm changing as I've changed my perspective there from through 180 degrees. I was over there, looking that way, and now I'm here looking that way. But these are still diverging apart, aren't they? These two are still diverging apart. That triangle is still a triangle shape. Because of the perspective, the shape of the triangle has changed a little in that it's longer and narrower. But this hasn't become more parallel with that, has it? It's still a triangle. The shape is still the same. These are still forming a triangular shape. These are still diverging apart. Okay. I move around further still. And they're still diverging apart. Remember when I was looking from that direction? These were diverging apart just as they are there. And there's the triangular shape. Now from this perspective, that looks at a slightly different angle. That doesn't look quite like that as it did before as I walk around. But, you know, this is not moving along here, is it? That's not moving along there. The actual shape is remaining the same. Diverging shadows there. What have I got? A spotlight over here, got a spotlight over there, got another spotlight there. It would have taken me ages to set this up, wouldn't it? And yeah, actually, as I swing the camera back, come on, Steve, get a grip. What are you doing here, man? We can see there's two short posts. We can see there's two short posts here. There's one there, and there's one there, and that angle is like that, and that angle is like that, isn't it? They're not parallel, are they? And of course, because of the size and shape of this structure. Here we have these shadows going all over the place. Yeah, actually there was a railway line there. What I could have, wouldn't be game to do it, but you know, they say, oh, it's the train line effect. I could have walked up onto the railway line and looked that way and seen the rails going to a point, and then looked in the other direction and seen the rail lines going to a point. What I wouldn't see is the rail lines diverging apart in either direction. That's just not going to happen, is it? So when they say that my shadow effect is the train line effect, it really isn't. Okay, am I going to walk around any further? Oh yeah, it's a couple more minutes to go. So yes, we can see that those angles, not the same. Not the same, are they? Let's just see what else we got here. Can we get some better shots of the shadows cast by the? As you can tell, I'm losing the will to live here with these muppets with their shadows in Apollo photographs. They've got absolutely no bloody idea what they're looking at. They're completely clueless, those guys, as you can see there. Where are we? Get the pen in the shot. That's got a little bit shorter, but the angle is the same, isn't it? It's still not in parallel with that, is it? That is still like that, isn't it? And as I come round again, as I came round the corner, you could see that was still remaining like that. The angle from the vertical post that's just gone out of shot there was still angled away from me. And that one there, there's another little post there. That shadow there, look at that. It's not parallel with that. Not parallel with that one. I see quite a lot of stuff around the place that is very, very good for doing this doing these shadow videos. So the more the Apollo Defectives keep on about it, the more videos I'll make about it. See that? Look at that. Look at all these intersecting shadows here. So, you know, if they can't get shadows to intersect at funny angles or right angles, they're really not trying very hard, are they? And these are still diverging apart, yeah? Still diverging apart. I've now walked back, I was round that side, I've walked around this side, it's still diverging apart, and I've walked around to here and it's still diverging apart. The aspect is, the perspective has changed the shape of the triangle, because remember it was long and thin when I was round there. As I walked around it was long and thin, and now it's getting a little more squat, but it's still triangular, isn't it? You know, these are not moving like that, are they? They're not paralleling up, are they? Or this is not moving along here, is it? So spoilt for choice there with regard intersecting shadows. I think that's probably enough actually to prove the point. It's I think this video is what? Oh, there's a couple of minutes to go. I've only spent a couple of minutes doing this, but I think that's a pretty good demonstration of intersecting shadows. Oh, I missed it. Intersecting shadows going all over the place. Okay, next clip. Now I do quite a lot of driving around in the bush, and I actually lived for some years up in the Pilbara area, which is where this chap is filming his four-wheel drive camping video. Now I look at this guy's channel. He's quite an interesting chap. He's a South African fella. He doesn't live very far from me, actually, here in Western Australia. Now I'll leave a link to his video below, and if you're interested in four-wheel driving in the outback and that sort of stuff, it's a very good channel to check out. Andrew St. Pierre White, and I hope he doesn't mind me just using a couple of stills from his video. I'll leave a link to this video below so you can check it out if you're interested in that sort of thing. But what I wanted to do was just show you the shadows. See, there's his wife who's filming. There's the shadow from the vehicle, shadow from a tree behind them as we look around. There's a shadow there from another tree there, which completely different angle, isn't it? Now look at the distance apart these objects are. And there's some more shadows here. Where? There. And there. So now I get out into the bush reasonably frequently, and I see this all the time. So if the Apollo Defectives are going to keep up their shadow nonsense, I'll make some more videos, and I'll walk around in the bush and I'll point all this out from different perspectives, as I've been doing in this video. As you can see, there are shadows going all over the place. Do you think Mr. St. Pierre White had a big spotlight set up over here just to light this tree for this video? I'll show you another clip. I just want to show you another clip from this chap's video, and then we'll move on to another very quick video I did out by the shed, where I've got a work trestle and some bits of wood I've been cutting up because I'm still fighting the termite battle at the moment. So, and I'll show you some more shadows, a bit more close up. And I'd have to ask the question: why on earth? What's his name? Jarrah White. Couldn't get all the angles. He couldn't replicate any angles. He said the only way he could get something a shadow to be at right angles was if he put the two objects together, something like that. Anyway, it's nonsense. Anyway, regardless. All right, let's just find another still from this guy's video. Okay, so you can see the angles of the shadows here. Completely different angle there. And there, see that? The shadows are fanning out exactly like the shadows in the Apollo picture the Defectives were looking at. The shadows are fanning out. So Marcus Allen will draw a big arrow here, there, another big arrow there. Not possible, not possible. Look at that. Look at all this gantry work here with all these spotlights that Mr. Pierre White has set up just so he can create these special shadow effects. Okay, well, let's go to my little trestle video. And even here, as you can see, this is one of these little workbenches. Look at the shadows from the legs. Not parallel, are they? I'll walk around here. They're not parallel, are they? Obviously I can't stand in the way of the sunlight, but Shadows cast by the legs of the little work frame. You can do this all day, really. That trapezoidal shape is not changing, is it? It's sort of the general shape of it is not changing. They're not becoming more or less parallel, are they? And if you look at the shadow on the plug, that's in completely different direction, isn't it? So the shadow's there from the legs of the little work thing. See that? Can I do that? And the shadow of the wood. That's the wood here. See the shadow of the wood? Let's just move the plastic tub. See the shadow of the wood there? And it looks like the shadow of the plug is going in to meet it, doesn't it? It's all entirely dependent on the size and the shape and the angle of what you're doing, of what the sun is casting shadows from. I mean, I can make those parallel. There you go. So 2 bits of wood there. And the shadows are parallel. But if I do that, the shadows are not parallel, are they? The shadows cast by the legs of the little workhorse. And we come round here. See the shadows of the workhorse. And the shadows of the bits of wood. That bit of wood. Now the shadows are parallel. No, they're not. So when do you get these people, saying these the Apollo shadows could only be created by spotlights? You will know for sure and certain that they are talking absolute bloody rubbish. You want a shadow to intersect that at right angles? There you go. Jarrah White saying, I could not get the shadows to intersect at right angles. Well, there you go. What angle do you want? I'll give you any angle you like. See the shadow being cast by the piece of wood. The object is presenting to the sun, the aspect that the object is presenting to the sun. If I stand it up, there you go. If I stand it up, that's vertical, that's one angle. If I lean it at a few degrees, that's another angle. That's another angle. If I lean it back towards the sun, it gets shorter. See that? I mean, to say the Apollo defectives are clueless doesn't even begin to describe how clueless they are, does it? See that? Coming to a point at the top of the trestle because they're not, because their legs are not vertical. They're coming in towards the top of the trestle. Well, there you go. Another simple demonstration of shadows being cast by the sun not being parallel. I could literally do this all day and every day. So there we go. Just a few more snippets of shadows being cast in different directions by the sun. Funny shadow angles. As I said in the previous clip, I spend a fair amount of time out in the bush, and I see shadows cast like that all the time, like the shadows cast in Mr. Pierre White's videos. So I'm quite happy to make shadow videos any time, and hopefully the Apollo defectives will learn from that, you know, rather than continue to fight the conspiracy corner, because let's face it, that's their hobby. I mean, I know Marcus Allen's got a magazine to push. I mean, it's more of a comic than a magazine, to be perfectly honest. But and they've got books to peddle as well. A couple of the guys, haven't they? Got books to peddle. It's all a hoax, all fake. And of course it isn't. And they're going to have egg on their face pretty soon, I would think. With more and more missions planned to go to the moon. So, and of course you've got the Artemis project coming up to put the first woman on the moon. America apparently wants to put the first woman on the moon by 2025, or is it 2024? And Artemis was the sister of one of the gods, was she? Which is why it's called the Artemis Project. And so not only will the Americans get the first man on the moon, but they'll get the first woman on the moon as well. I wonder why the Russians never tried that. And if it was all faked, why didn't they have a little bit of a chat behind the scenes? You know, so the Russians could say, "You put first man on the moon. We back your fake story about you put man on moon. You back our fake story about putting first woman on moon. Yes?" We don't see any of that, do we? I've actually got a clip of Khrushchev himself saying he was really, you could tell he was really ticked off. First man on moon should have been Russian. So don't listen to any of this bloody nonsense from Marcus Allen about or any of these guys about the Russians keeping it quiet. It's all faked. The Russian national pride would not allow that. They will be screaming from the rooftops. And everybody needs the Russians' gas. The Russians have everybody over a barrel with the gas and the oil. It's not the other way around. So they would be screaming. And of course, they sent an unmanned probe along at the same time as Apollo 11 just to make sure the Americans pulled it off. Or didn't go to the moon and not be able to pull it off and then tell the world that they did. That was why the Russians sent an unmanned probe along at the same time. They know the Americans landed on the moon, as does everybody else with an IQ bigger than their shoe size. All right, well, again, if you struggled through this video all the way to this point, as I have, losing the will to live with these cretins, thank you very much indeed for watching, and maybe I'll catch you again.